Good afternoon and soon to be evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels, and we're kicking off another little small mini series here that is very pertinent as of right now in regards to our country. There are already rumors all over the place, and you've had Elon. I detest that man, as well as Trump beginning to hint at that there might be some severe cuts to Medicaid. So, of course, that means my phone is lighting up like a Christmas tree, where we've got MoDOT posting on it. We have the Centers for Independent Living, ARC, NOVA, Easter Seals. There is a lot of nervous folks in the service system right now. One of the major reasons why that is, we'll go over it in more detail, but just from a professional standpoint, having worked inside this field, the gateway to all community-based and otherwise services for people with developmental disabilities in the United States is through Medicaid. Medicaid provides the funding for these community-based services, which includes things such as voc rehab. It also works hand in hand with HUD, where you have places for assisted living that it also helps fund. Places like Crowhaven out in Nixon, Missouri, as well as funding Sassafras, which is another disability assisted living complex that is out here in my city of Springfield. There's other such places throughout the United States. But it's not just that, though. It also covers the funding in regards to many of the different group homes that are positioned throughout the state. It covers the costs of direct care staff. It covers costs for places such as Judavine Center for Autism, which is based out of St. Louis, which as they continue to progress are beginning to get more branches. We have an office here out in my city of Springfield. And it's not just that. The services that ARC has available for those of us with developmental disabilities rely almost pretty much solely on that Medicaid funding. See, ARC provides a myriad of different services. Teaching living skills, covering things such as direct care staff. It covers in regards to walking you through Social Security. It provides job coaching, which I've participated in connection alongside voc rehab, and the assistance in helping those of us with developmental disabilities find employment out in our communities to work among ourselves and our neighbors. It covers just about everything, folks. And not just that. I mentioned Sassafras Apartments. I brought that up on purpose for a reason. It's not just folks like me who can eventually get themselves up and out of the service system that Medicaid covers here. The people at Sassafras with their assisted living are folks who are paraplegic. So they are from the waist down paralyzed. They require tubes. They require major assistance in being able to bathe, being able to get in and out of bed, being able to take care of their homes and apartments, grocery shopping, all the things that you and I take for granted in our day-to-day lives, okay? Their feeding tubes, their oxygen tanks, all of that through Medicaid funding, okay? All of it. All those services come from the Medicaid gateway. Which means when I was in the service system, I too had to come through that gateway and was not fully approved for it until after I had left my aunt's house and had been taken off of their insurance. Because places like ARC, like Easter Seals, do not take funding for their programs through private or employer taking care of you insurance. If you don't have Medicaid, you do not have access to those services. Okay? It is literally the gateway. There is a major catch-22 problem there, which we will address at another point in time. But what I want to really bring home to you before we go again and do the disclaimers and the trigger warnings is Medicaid funding is absolutely essential for a lot of these folks, particularly those of us with developmental and physical disabilities and elderly, in order to have the funding necessary to cover the services that we need, both medical, social, jobs, and otherwise, right? Now, when you're talking about major cuts to Medicaid, I can tell you what I've seen in the past and the fact that I'm fearing, considering who we're dealing with here, that it's going to be a whole lot worse in the future. So, we're going to go back here to early 2000s, 2010s, okay? So, we're talking Bush era. Circa 2006-2007. During that time period, the Missouri GOP, with encouragement from the said Republicans that were running the country at that time, took out millions and millions of dollars out of the Medicaid programs throughout the state. So what that did is you had people like me, people who are autistic. They may not be quite as vocal as me. They're various different places on the spectrum. But you get people with developmental disabilities, autism, Down syndrome, Angel syndrome, as well as physical cerebral palsy, being paraplegic, things of this nature. And what they had to do, due to the loss of that funding, was tighten up just who was going to be allowed to be able to receive services through places like ARC, Easter Seals, Nova, and Judifine. Because after that happened, there just simply wasn't enough money to go around. So things had to be reorganized and prioritized. What I mean by that means that a lot of us with developmental disabilities got left out in the cold. And because of that rehashing in regards to, in particular, life events, how many difficulties you needed to have in order to qualify for Medicaid to get those state services, to go through the regional office and into ARC or one of these other programs. Yeah, they tightened it. They tightened it to a point that the good majority of people with developmental disabilities had to try something else. I was ridiculously lucky. By that time, I had began to work with the state. I had gotten into Medicaid before the tightening began and the servicing got tightened up. But after that happened, I had to begin to fight continuously to hold on to those services for a good 3 to 4 years due to that tightening. Okay? And boy, they cut me loose as fast as they could. Right? Now, you may say, well, Tiff, that just means for people like you who maybe don't need the services as badly are being cut out, but it still covers the other types of disabilities you're talking about, right? Right? I'm sorry, Karen, but no. No, it does not. Other programs that have to do with more physical disabilities, such as running and keeping places like Sassafras going with their on-site direct care staff should any emergency happen, they took a hit. A lot of things had to be cut down. Mainly due to gas prices, among other things, okay? The major cuts impacted their services. Granted, this is not the level of hit that we are possibly taking a look at down the pipeline now. Not nearly what they're talking about with Elon now. But many people with developmental disabilities out in this region and throughout the United States, people who would have previously qualified for extremely necessary services were no longer eligible to be able to receive them. Okay? Consequently, let me be blunt, suicide number amongst those of us with developmental disabilities went up astronomically. People like me had to work double duty. At work, taking care of my pocket of consumers, the 25% part of here out in the southwest region of Missouri. Off the clock, I had to assist these individuals who now no longer qualified for these services due to the cuts of Medicaid, and trying to help them and their desperate parents find literally anything in regards to services that they could possibly try and be a part of. A lot of those services are more classroom style. We're talking teaching life skills in the setting of a classroom. It does not provide for necessary things such as direct care staff, or in my case, several of us who had community integrators that helped us to be better able to go out amongst our neighbors and communities and be able to grocery shop and all those things. If you know, not having a public breakdown. Okay? Yeah. The access to what services you can get a hold of outside of that Medicaid gateway is extremely limited. Extremely limited. For those folks who do have physical disabilities, but are mostly able to get around where they're not necessarily attached to feeding tubes or oxygen tanks, they also took the hit. Okay? Many of them that were waiting for the HUD list, oh my God, the HUD wait list now is literally the stuff of nightmares. The stuff of nightmares. So yeah, when I tell you ARC is one of the biggest providers when it comes to services for people with developmental disabilities, physical disabilities, and the elderly, this is what I'm talking about. When I tell you Medicaid is the gateway, it's the door we all have to walk through and get approved for if we want to get into the service system and have access to the services that are actually going to best serve what our individual needs are. Medicaid taking the massive hit that is being soft launched throughout old mainstream media. I can't overemphasize how catastrophic that is going to be. Just talking personally from my friends at Sassafras, that I do still go down there on the bus every so often and go and visit. Or the places with more group homes with people with more physical disabilities, they require more, better, well-trained direct care staff, many who are also med assistants. All that funding comes through Medicaid. Cuts to that Medicaid on the level that we're talking about now. You really are looking at life and death. Think about what I'm telling you, the services this provides, because now we're going to go beyond ARC and community-based services, and we're going to talk about medical real quick before we get to reading this. So what else does it cover? From personal experience from my friends, like those at Sassafras, others who I've met on the bus while they were on their way to their sheltered workshop jobs, and those folks that I met at my own assisted living apartment circa 2004 over at Crowhaven. Yeah, let's talk about medical, exactly what that's covering here. Feeding tubes and oxygen tubes, wheelchairs, and other assistance in regards to walking. For those who need the most help, for like direct care staff, people who need to have slings with their beds, who are paraplegic, that help lift them up and get them up and out of their beds in the morning and get them into their beds at night. It covers med staff there that sometimes, depending on the medical condition, may need to be able to stay there with the consumer overnight in case there's a middle of the night emergency, that they need to be able to get to that consumer as quickly as possible. We really are talking about life and death here. Okay? Alright, we're going to go through this article here that we are getting from the main National ARC website, and then we'll go ahead and let you all go off to the rest of your activities. So, let's go over the overview first. Medicaid is the nation's primary health insurance program for people with disabilities, but it's also so much more than health care. For individuals with disabilities and their families, Medicaid also funds vital supports to keep them in their communities. We all know how Trump wants to drag us back into the institutionalizational era. Well, I'm sorry, sir, but that flag has long ago been taken down. Alright? Institutions were hotbeds for every single kind of abuse known to man. Okay? It doesn't make things cheaper. It makes those of us who through an accident of birth or an accident of life are disabled are grouped up so you don't have to deal with us, and then you don't care what happens to us afterward. I mean, I get it, but can we please stop trying to lie to the public here? Can we actually talk about what really went down in those institutions during that era? There is a reason why so many things that you'll see in the horror genre has to do with old institutions. Okay? Alright, let me go ahead and continue before I take you off into left field here. For many people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, I/DD, developmental disabilities, Medicaid is generally the only source. I want you to underline that and capitalize every single letter in those two words right there. Only source of funds for them to live and work in the community with friends and families and avoid more costly and segregated nursing homes or institutions. Nationwide, state and federal Medicaid together provide over 75%. Think of that, folks. Put a human face on that. Put a human face on that. Over 75% of the funding for services with people with I or DD is covered by Medicaid. So those people at sassafras, the feeding tubes and oxygen tanks, that's Medicaid. Direct care staff, Medicaid. Assistive devices such as different things to help you up and out of your bed for my paraplegic friends, Medicaid. Doctor's visits, therapy visits, medication, you name it, it is Medicaid funded. Literally over 75% of all of that is covered by Medicaid. There is a reason why Medicaid is used as a major gateway, and it's kind of the only way. Literally, Missouri, it is the only way that is a true gateway to real services. It is what it is. I don't have to like it in order for it to be true. Let me continue to read here. However, many states have lengthy waiting lists for these vital services or are only able to provide limited supports to eligible people with I or DD. So, what I told you about that hit we took back in the early 2000s, that's what I mean. When they started limiting and tightening up the criteria in regards to who would be able to receive services by means of Medicaid, that was due to the major federal and state cuts. Millions and millions of dollars that we got hit with. And to be absolutely honest with you all, we were already running on a skeleton crew. The people that we did have there, all of us had caseloads up to our eyeballs. Okay? And then we got hit with more. I'm going to go ahead and continue here. Medicaid is critical for many people with disabilities who may not have access to employer-based or other private coverage, have greater medical needs, and often require assistance with activities of daily living throughout their lifetimes. What I want to add to this, because you'll be looking at me, but what about you, Tiff? You get that access. I had to fight by state in order to get off of the service system, okay? And have a normal full-time job and full control over my own insurance and services. That is its own subject, okay? The problem out here is we live in a catch-22 situation for places like ARC and the places I tell you about on this channel. Here's that catch-22. Medicaid is your gateway. In order to have access to any of the services that I've talked to you all about, you got to get approved for Medicaid. If you do not have Medicaid, the pickings get real slim real fast. There are some supports out there. Again, the centers for independent living with their life skill classes and things of that nature and ilk. There's mentor programs where people like me can come in and help teach life skills, eating healthy, giving advice in regards to medical, and if there's any other help that maybe could be found through a private charity organization to help them offset the cost that Medicaid would be covered. But by and large, in regards to the service system, if you are found ineligible for Medicaid, trigger warning, we curse on this channel, you're basically fucked. Okay? That Medicaid gateway is the only way you're going to be able to get access to places like ARC, like Easter Seals, and these people I've been telling you about. Hell, even Rivendell out there off the new, I think that's I-77? Yeah, that's I-77. Yeah. So, you're kind of left with scraps. If you apply for and they tell you that you are not eligible for Medicaid. Okay, I want you to think about that. Because we're talking about people with developmental disabilities, similar to the ones that the JRC speak about, where they give those little life stories all the time. People who need that help with direct care staff, who need that help, including social workers, parents, a center of support that includes some community members. Yeah. I need you to really think about it. Think about the fact that the majority of those of us who do have developmental disabilities through means of ARC, with their partnership with Voc Rehab, this is how we find jobs. This is how we get help in regards to things such as transportation to said jobs, or help in regards to possibly, if the avenue is open, going into a trade school or secondary education. If you do not get through the gateway that is Medicaid, you're boned. Not going to sugarcoat it. It is what it is. This has been a major problem I've been speaking on for multiple years. I've been internally working with others in regards to how to address and fix that particular issue. But now, everything's gotten real cloudy because you've got these people who want to take more money out of services, which means now even our most vulnerable that we were still able to hold on to and continue to help, their services are at risk now. That's what I want you to understand. Not just the community integration, life skills, what have you, but the direct care staff that assist directly, helping people get in and out of bed, to bathe, to eat. All those services, Medicaid, and they already have tightened the people who are able to get access and be approved for it. Imagine how much they're going to tighten how many people can get onto Medicaid after the cuts that Trump and Elon have been hinting around about come down. You're talking major problems, not just for my state, but remember, ARC is a national provider for services for people with physical as well as developmental disabilities as well as covering services for the elderly and what have you. This literally is like staring into the barrel, for lack of a better way to put it. But let me go ahead and continue here. Right, 75%, we went over the waiting list. Medicaid is critical for many people with disabilities who may not have access to employer-based or other private coverage. Again, we went through that. Medicaid's the gateway into the service system. You don't get Medicaid, you're kind of boned. Is the system messed up and wrong? Yes, that's why there's people like me who've been trying to figure out a solution to that overall problem for like the last 15 years. We don't have an answer yet, because dealing with private insurance companies, even single player, when you do it of your own volition, is essentially like pulling teeth. And as we know from previously, they do not like covering pre-existing conditions and things like direct care staff, things like assisted, oh my god, I lost my frame of speech here. With the different machines, adaptive equipment, you get where I'm going. Oh my god, what is wrong with me today? Assisted devices. That's where I was going. All covered by Medicaid. Those big hits? Really think about it. Really think about it. And not just that, but think also about the parents. If you learn anything from JRC, those parents are panicking. That steady hand to guide them along properly. What's that funding? If you're not doing it of your own volition free of charge, which is, hi, how you're doing, I do that. But I'm only one person. You get where I'm going with this, right? Okay. Good. The program currently covers over 10 million non-elderly people with disabilities. You can learn more about ARC's position on Medicaid by reading our position statements on healthcare and long-term supports and services. So, we are going to start with this overview, because it seems like this is a pretty good introduction. And we will start getting into the healthcare, the long-term supports and services, what those look like, why what we're looking at is scaring so many of us in the disability rights movements and the movements for the rights of people who have mental health issues, NAMI, People First, ASAN. There is a reason why we are trying to get your attention right now. So, we're going to close off with this introduction, folks. We don't get very many views on this channel, and the few we do tend to get removed from time to time. So, folks, if you could, please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, don't forget to hit the comments. I am going to go ahead and include a link in the description box and right to the ARC website here if you'd like to pull it up and take a look for yourself and do a little pre-reading before we get into the next episode tomorrow. And of course, we'll continue to post on the JRC until the JRC has gone the way of the dodo. I appreciate your time, folks. As always, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. I'll see you all later. Bye now.